Hi, everybody, and welcome to our webinar today, where we are lucky enough to be joined by one of our favourites here at Auscontact, the fantastic Donnie Chai from our Gold Partners Dialpad. Today's webinar is Invisible AI, how to automate without alienating your customers. So I'm super excited about this topic. We're going to explore practical strategies for building human-centric automation that enhances customer experience. We keep hearing from customers, from members, that customers are saying they want organisations supporting them with human services. And we see the best CX is where organisations are designing AI-powered workflows that are seamless, efficient, and human-centric. So again, very lucky today to have Donnie here to share ways to really kind of transition that and translate it for us to understand how to better balance AI and human expertise within your organisation. In the spirit of reconciliation, Auscontact acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia, their connections to land, sea, and community. We pay our respect to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders people here today. Today's webinar, as always, will run for approximately 60 minutes. And during that time, we hope that the session provides some really interesting insights and takeaways for you to think about in your AI journey, but equally thinking about your customer interaction strategy and what that looks like and feels like from their perspective. We're going to have a few polls in the session. And to round it off, we'll have Q&A at the end of the webinar, if time permits. I am Fran Southwood, CEO of Auscontact and your moderator for today. I'm just going to run through some general housekeeping with you. Remember to interact to maximise what you take away. If you've got questions for Donnie, put them in the chat or the QA. We want to see some good ones there. There's no need to take too many notes. We'll give you a recording to the webinar following the session, and we'll also ask Donnie to let us share some of the slides. And yeah, so you'll have all of that to come back on. Like I said, we will have some polls. Make the questions good, because there's going to be a prize for the best question. You can see there on your screen a gift card from Prezi, so fabulous opportunity there. With the Q&A or any chat comments that you've got, just use the panel buttons on the bottom. You can ask questions or make those comments anytime throughout. If they make sense with what Donnie's going through, I'll ask them in real time. If they're somewhat unrelated and something that we might be covering off later on, I'll leave them and we'll cover those in the Q&A at the end. If you're listening through headphones or speakers and have any issues, just use that raise hand button. One of the team from Auscontact will jump in and try and help. Alternatively, you can use the dial-in info that was on your original registration. Okay, I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to introduce our speaker for today. As I said, from our gold partners at Dialpad, Donnie Chai, Senior Sales Engineer, ANZ. Donnie, welcome. Excited again. We always have great sessions, and I know our biggest challenge is sticking to 60 minutes. We're going to make that our goal today, but super excited to have you here with us.
Thank you for the warm intro, Fran, and really great to be back presenting with Auscontact again. We've got some pretty exciting topics lined up today. I genuinely appreciate everyone participating. You're taking an hour out of your day to join us, and hopefully by the end of the session, you'll walk away with some fresh ideas, maybe a bit of inspiration too. Now, the team here at Dialpad, we've been working pretty hard on something very special, and it's a project focused on agentic AI, which is today's kind of topic. Everything you're about to see has been built to help accelerate business outcomes with more intelligence and efficiency, powered by our own in-house agentic AI. But you know what? I'm not going to give up too much away. I just want to play a little bit of a teaser video. So sit back and enjoy this quick 1-minute video before we kind of get into the whole thing.
Hi, I'd like to reschedule my appointment for Thursday.
Of course, we have openings Thursday at 10 and 2.
Can we do 10?
Great, I'll make that change for you now.
Oops, sorry. All right. Well, I don't know about you, but personally, I've been genuinely blown away by what the team has built. And this really feels like the start of something really amazing. The best part of it is that we're just getting started and we can't wait to make this accessible to all of our customers around the world. And trust me, there's a lot more innovation coming on the way. So definitely stay in tuned what's next. Now, to kick things off, we're going to get a feel for the room today, just with our first poll. And it's about when you think about AI in customer service, what's your first impression? We've got a few answers to choose from. Help you with the simple stuff, feel a bit impersonal. Is it useful? Maybe still a bit early, or maybe you're not quite sure yet. Now, while you're filling this out, I'm just going to ask a question to Fran. Now, Fran, I'm sure you've spoken with a lot of contact center leaders nowadays. Have you noticed maybe people becoming a little bit more accepting of AI, or do you think we're still in that show me that it still works phase?
Look, I think we're definitely seeing much more readily accepted use cases. AI. I think the more comfortable people are with it in their lives, we're seeing it kind of everywhere, right? I think where it's interesting though is this kind of position that says, but what I do. So again, think about people working in a contact center, some of the stuff in your video there, some straightforward, really transactional activities. So good, so good. I always call that the noise, right?
Mm,
Where they struggle to see themselves in some of the talk about AI is where there is layered complexity, where it is, potentially it's the net effect of the interaction, or, they might do something quite specialized and they're like, well, there's a little bit of the personal, how could it replace me and what I do,
right.
combined with how could it do what we need it to do for our customer, combined with I haven't quite seen it do that yet. So I think there's an absolute increase in acceptance for straightforward transactional kind of
Mm.
elements. Probably where, people are still curious and wanting to see more is to what level does that go? Where does it go? And what's the sweet spot for their customer?
100%. I cannot agree more with that statement. And I think, we're going to see a lot of that kind of, I guess, questions bubbling up in terms of like, where does it really best fit in terms of using these new tools? But in speaking of that, I think we've got some pretty good answers coming out here.
Yeah.
And yeah, look at that. The room's pretty split, isn't it? I mean, useful as long as the guardrails, so people are, fairly, I guess, uh, careful around like how they want to use AI and making sure that it's safe to use. And I think that comes up a lot in a lot of themes, especially with the whole AI tools and innovation we're using in businesses. Very, very interesting stuff.
Yeah, and look, I think, Johnny, that reflects also the media and the hype that we're seeing in the environment, right? We're hearing organizations get caught out. So this risk aversion is based on people actually having some failures
Mm,
or some incidents that are occurring without the appropriate guardrails that are making or having a real impact on not only the reputation of the organization, but the, comfort level of customers. So that doesn't surprise me.
100%, 100%. Now, I mean, just moving on to the kicking off this topic about invisible AI, we're going to start talking a little bit more about, what AI actually means, to different people. But with that in mind, really, I just want to talk about what Gartner has recently put out, with their pretty striking prediction. They're saying that over 40% of agentic AI projects will be canceled by 2027. Now, this is pretty dramatic, but it's actually quite a useful insight to see what's actually really going out there in the market. Agentic AI, if you didn't know what it is, it's just a fancy way of saying that, it's AI that doesn't wait for you to tell it what to do. It actually, will plan for you, it'll decide for you and, act on its own. You just think of it as like an entity with a little bit of initiative there. The challenge here, I think that a lot of businesses are jumping in quite maybe a bit too fast because, well, because every AI is just about everywhere, but they don't always stop to ask, how does this actually fit, our people, our customers, and the way we work? And that's where so many of these projects actually stumble. It's not that, because the tech isn't smart enough, it's that the setup often it really forgets about the humans who actually have to work with these AI tools. And I mean, if I had to take something what Gartner's really saying here, it's that the success with AI, it's not about just having, the flashiest tool in your toolkit. It's about really just building that solid foundation around how people use them, right? And I think that's what I really want to explore with everyone today, just how AI can be designed so that it really helps quietly in the background and, leading to the topic of what we call invisible AI. So with Gartner's prediction, we've just heard that. Let's break down, a little bit more in detail, but what agentic AI really means in simple terms. So, agentic, we've heard this word floating around a lot nowadays. And I'll just think of it like an agency. Like I said before, it's an AI that doesn't sit and wait for you to click or type like you do with ChatGPT. It's got a little bit more initiative. It can, plan what to do next, use what it already knows, even act on its own when it makes sense. Now, with agentic, there are four main building blocks that actually make this work. And we call them the four pillars of agentic workflows. The first one is the goal orientation. It's not like, why do you exist? Why do you need, why? It's the why behind everything it does, right? The AI is working towards a very clear goal. It's not just, answering a question. And then you also got contextual memory. It remembers what's happened before, which is crucial, especially in the contact center context. You really don't want an AI forgetting what happened in the last 3 phone calls that you had with your customers. And then you have the tool integration. So this is where AI connects with your systems. Maybe it updates your CRM, or maybe sends a message to your supervisor, or maybe automatically sends an email to a customer for feedback, whatever it might be. And it just doesn't live in isolation. And the last one is multi-agent collaboration. And AI where actually connects with your systems. AI where work with humans and other AIs, like a team player. So you'll notice, none of this really here is about replacing people. Fran, you mentioned that some people are just afraid, like, is it going to replace my job? But it's really about, designing these smarter workflows where humans and AI play to their strengths. And, we're going to look at in the next few slides, what happens when these pillars are not in place and understand a little bit more about why and where most of these projects actually fall apart. Now, if those 4 pillars sounded pretty solid, you might be wondering, why do so many of these AI projects still fall flat? And the thing here is that it's rarely because, we're pointing the finger at technology. Maybe it's not good enough. It's not really the case. It's almost always the human design aspect around it that trips people up. The first thing is that you got over automation, where businesses get really excited about a new AI toy or AI tool, and they try to automate everything, right? Look, with good reasons, I'm sure. You end up with maybe a chatbot that can handle 50, 100, 1,000 questions, but still can't handle one simple, can I please talk to a person moment? And then you've got the lack of human oversight. You're rolling something out, just assuming it's going to learn on its own. Look, AI, as great as it is, it still needs guidance. Imagine, you hire a new employee into your company and you never check their work. It just doesn't make sense, right? You just don't do that, right? You have to give it guidance, right? The next one is about unclear objectives. And this one's pretty big because, teams start with, oh, I really need AI. No, we need these AI tools. But maybe they can't quite elaborate exactly why they actually need it. But if you don't know what your success looks like or the end goal, you never know if you're going to get there at all. And the last one, I think this is pretty big too, is customer mistrust. When you have customers interact with your tools or your service and the experience feels robotic, maybe too scripted, people not stupid. They can sense it. And they don't feel heard. And that's when the technology actually might hurt your brand instead of trying to help it. So when you look at all of these, the message here is pretty simple. The AI doesn't fail because it's too smart. It actually fails when it forgets to stay human. And I think that's a topic that's going to be coming up quite often as we explore this.
Donnie, I think they really resonate with what I'm hearing from members. It's interesting, the unclear objectives. I cannot tell you how many times I hear, boards and very senior executives say they just want that AI thing in. Just get that AI. And it's like, guys, we need to have a conversation here. Because it's almost then retrofit. It's retrofitting this technology that they've sunk a whole lot of money into, but actually it was never aligned to the problem statement at the beginning.
Yep.
And equally, it's totally misaligned to both the customer strategy and the interaction strategy that actually defines kind of where it fits, right? So there's this real interest there. Lack of human oversight. We only have to look at the media to see where that has played out over the last 12 months, 24 months. And interesting, you touched about the customer mistrust and the lack of sounding human. I would probably also pose that quite often when our frontline staff in contact centers aren't empowered and all they do is read a script and can't operate outside it, they are then referred to as having that same problem, right? So that robotic, no human, can't be empathetic, can't adjust and tailor. So, it's interesting. It's the same problem we've had posed to us by customers in our industry, but actually not about technology, about our people. So it's kind of rinse and repeat, right? Still the same problem from a customer perspective.
100%, 100%. And I think we have to go back to the 4 pillars, right? Really we'll have that well defined, but everyone also needs to be aligned to it as well. I mean, it's not just one isolated team that needs to follow that. Everyone else should do the same too. And, the companies work in different ways, but hopefully we give people some inspiration to try and align that later today.
Donnie, I'm just going to jump in with a quick question that we've got here.
Yeah, sure.
From Georgie, and he's sort of made a really good point here in relation to invisible AI depends on clean data and well-documented processes to work in the background. And I know you touched on that with making sure that it's, doing the complete component, it's picking up everything, and it's got strong foundational pieces in place, which leads to the question here, which is how do you see companies overcoming that gap between wanting that instant AI outcome and doing the slower foundational work to get AI ready? And, we talk about optimizing current state to actually be ready for some of this stuff. What are you seeing in the environment? Are you seeing still that mismatch, or are you seeing organizations actually recognize that more now?
Yeah, I think there's a slow realization that companies are going towards that, I guess, mismatch itself, and maybe more focusing energy towards over automation, at least from the conversations I've been having with a lot of my customers. People like, oh, we just need to automate this because we need that to become a lot more efficient. And I totally get it. And I think it's great. But maybe they're just overlooking the fact that, to do all of that, you really, like Georgie mentioned, needs clean data and something that's a well-documented process. So, but then you have to come back again to the 4 pillars. It's like, what is the main goal you're trying to do here? It's like, we need to make this a lot faster and more efficient. But why? You need to ask why. Why is it important? Why can't it just be handled as BAU? And then if you can't answer that question, like, well, you probably don't really have a clear idea about why you're trying to do this then. And you're just wasting your money buying an AI tool just because you want to be, have FOMO. I'm sorry, it's not probably not the.
No, I think it's a valid call out, and I think there's this need to really, when we're looking at business processes and really, like Georgie said, when we're looking at that foundation work, we've actually got to say, why do we even need to do this? Actually, how do we eliminate instead of automate? Like, where's that other focus of mindset? Anyway.
Yeah. And I mean, I think the best way, really, at least the most trusted way, is just speak to your customers, see what do they actually want out of this. It's like, hey, look, I just need to update my address. I'm okay just to do that with an AI tool, but other complicated stuff, just let me talk to a human, please. I mean, it could be as simple as that, but I'm oversimplifying it. But hopefully that kind of answers the question, Georgie, but feel free to follow up if you need to know more. Okay. So what's interesting is that, even with all the buzz around agentic AI and, full automation, a lot of CX leaders and agents still see the biggest value of AI as, pretty simple. It helps people to get their work done a lot faster and better. And, you can't argue with that. One Metrigy study found that assisting humans to be more productive ranked as the #1 at the top value of AI for IT and CX leaders there. And within the Dialpad State of Contact Center report, we found that both managers and agents said that they believe it's possible to have maybe a bit too much AI in customer interactions, which tells us something a bit important here. People don't want AI to take over. Well, always anyway. And they want it to lighten the load, really, at the end of the day. So when we think about AI working in contact centers, it's not about replacing the human. It's about scaling the things that human already do well, things that we already touched on, what we discussed just earlier. Things that human do well is like empathy, creativity, a bit of judgment, common sense, and let AI handle the rest of the other repetitive stuff that drains a lot of your time and energy. And when you get this mix right, that's when AI becomes really invisible, and and that's where how great service actually happens there. And following on from the report, this is where things get a bit interesting. Leaders might love the productivity story, but when you ask people on the front line, the agents and managers or supervisors, they're a little far less starry-eyed. They haven't quite drank the cool AI Kool-Aid on that one just yet. But in fact, about maybe 69% of them say they're a bit worried that AI's limitations could hurt the customer's experience. And that's not a minority whisper. It's actually a lot of people raising their hands saying this concern. Now, if we dig in a little bit deeper with this, you'll find the specific fears relate to just three main things. One is roughly about 38% are worried about malfunctions, maybe even giving the wrong answers. 35% saying AI kind of struggles with a lot of complex customer issues. And 33% that feel that things get maybe a little bit too impersonal, when the human, gets lost in translation here. So yes, AI is an incredibly powerful tool, but power without control or context or care feels a bit risky. That's a balance we need to strike. Fran, I'm sure you've heard some similar stories about, what agents saying, the bot told me to do the wrong thing and the customer hung up on me, or maybe it gave me a script where the customer was clearly upset. What's your take on where these concerns may be coming from on the ground?
Yeah, look, I think there's a couple of drivers, Johnny. I think #1, there's still this fear and this change component, right? So, I remember talking to one organization and their frontline staff dealt with errors. That was what they dealt with in this particular area. And I was doing a town hall with them, and the staff said, well, nobody in the country knows how to do X because that's all I do all day long. And I'm like, yeah, but all you see is X. So again, perception of what that agent sees is not everything. So they're not going to see the customers that are actually dealt with. They're not going to see the invisible solutions, right? They don't see any of that stuff because it's seamless. It happens. There's no complaints. There's no feel of dissatisfaction or satisfaction, right? It's kind of invisible. So because what they do see and what they hear and the anecdotal conversations are about where it is squeaky or is not quite, sometimes that can result in a sense of it being bigger than it is. So I think there's a little bit of that.
Yep.
It's also coupled with a little bit of the fear. This is my job. I'm an expert. I'm really good at it. So again, they're looking for some of those challenges sometimes. Complexity, I mean, I touched on that before. I think they've got a point. There are some things that are actually not, and we've got a question here from Matt that I'll touch on in a minute. If you could get rid of that straightforward transactional low-hanging value, you don't want to have your people spending their time talking to someone about a return. That's not the best use of your investment in your people, and it's not the best use of their skills, right? So actually what you want to do is free them up to deal with the complex. So openly calling out that actually that's what your role is. Your role is complexity. It's vulnerable customers. It's the complex net effect of situations that mean we need you to be not just empathetic as a person, but we need you to be a problem solver and curious to actually then help us think of different ways to solve this for the next person that might have that same problem. So, I think that's, a really great way. The wrong answers and malfunctions. Again, we hear a lot about, hallucination and all sorts of errors within AI solutions. But equally, where it's not always straightforward, there is this fear of getting it wrong and people then taking that advice. So there is validity in the concern. I would say it's not always about the AI solution, though. It's actually more about processes, organizational construct, organizational risk appetite. So I think it manifests this way. I think it's kind of more complex than just one or the other. It is
That's
quite
right.
a grey area, and it takes real leadership and the alignment. You touched on it before, the alignment to what is your broader strategy, where does this fit, and what is the problem it's trying to solve, and what does that leave? Because if you're not dealing with the loss factor of your people, this is what comes out, and it will play out and play out and play out. But the comment here from Matt, and it's relevant to a lot of our members. Government-based call center, dealing with extremely vulnerable component of society. How do we overcome our ability to be empathetic in an environment where empathy, understanding are actually paramount, even from that initial standpoint? And it might be jarring to someone with an extreme set of personal circumstances, not immediately having that empathetic ear. And we hear that a lot from our government support partners, that actually, where does it fit? And maybe it touches to the other things you were talking about AI support as opposed to AI solution.
Yep. And this is a great question that Matt's asking here, because I think there's a lot, I guess, how do you say, misunderstanding of like, we need AI to take care of everything, or when is it the right time for a human to actually take over in these kind of very, very sensitive situations, right? Actually, I'm actually going to cover that off in my next slide, because hopefully that will actually address it, because this actually is kind of like will kind of answer a lot of that. So with I'll try to answer your question here, Matt. But let me just try and talk about this first. Now, when we talk about AI automation and all the futuristic stuff, it's really easy to forget that things that move the needle for customers that are incredibly simple here. And I think this is really powerful. Sometimes a bit too simple, but really powerful. Citing back from the state of contact center study Dialpad did, both agents and supervisors said that the number one factor for improving customer satisfaction, or like maybe just changing the way a conversation could go, isn't a fancy new tool that you need to implement, right? It's actually keeping a really, really accurate and up-to-date record of the customer interactions, right? This is actually key because the data is really powerful. It's very basic, but super, super important and powerful. When you actually know what the customer story is already, what's been said, what's been promised, what the situation is, you're actually halfway to solving the issue even before you click the answer button to say hello, or when if it's on a chat. And other things can also come up to, like resolving issues quickly, keeping consistency between channels, really showing that you actually understand the customer. But it really just starts with this visibility part here. having that clear history in front of you, this is where actually invisible AI really, really shines the best. Because you can use things like live transcriptions, real-time coaching, sentiment analysis. These kind of tools don't replace people. They actually make the fundamentals a lot easier to get right. So, I mean, what do you think, Fran? Do you think that that kind of answers Matt's question around that one?
Yeah, I think it's more that there's almost, so I think you're totally right. It's keeping the person at the front, right? They are actually the
Yeah.
face. And that's what the customer sees. They're supported by this amazing tech that actually helps them be better at their job. I think where the challenge is, and Matt, if you've got follow-up, put it through. The challenge is that organizations that are making the decisions about AI are not sort of seeing that. I think it's an all or nothing kind of quick, we've got to get in there. And Hannah's put something here about it feels like there's an AI race underway. And Hannah, you are totally spot on
Yeah.
from what I'm seeing
Yeah.
as well.
Agreed.
It's this, we've just got to get it, we've got to get it, we've got to have it. But actually, there's a whole lot of work that needs to happen that says, for who? For who in our customer group does this make sense? For what, as far as what types of interactions, what are the instances where we won't, where we will just have that invisible support on the side? Because actually, our customer demands a different set of care. And that work's got to happen first. You've got to actually make very conscious, deliberate, and strategic decisions before you jump in. And I think it's where we're kind of seeing a little bit of misalignment with the action that's actually undertaken. It's really easy to sit there and say AI can do X. It can. We know it can, right? But actually, what's the customer need, and does that marry up? And I think that's a huge opportunity for the influence for, heads of the contact center and the intelligence and the analytics to actually feed into and influence those sorts of discussions and conversations. They're the conversations that need to be had. Hannah goes on to say, across industries, we've seen how getting it wrong, even once, can deeply damage CX and trust. Absolutely. In both the technology and the brand, and asks if you've got any use cases or examples where you've seen companies who have actually got that right balance. So moving forward with AI to create value and efficiency, but doing so carefully enough to preserve customer confidence and EX. And maybe it's that, without saying who the customers are, Johnny, what's their approach? Are they having those strategic, deliberate conversations early on in the piece versus I've just got a cool tool and I'm going to use it?
Yeah, 100%. I think it's really about aligning to, again, going back to the foundations about what we're trying to. So companies who have actually got this right, they know exactly what the end goal is. I actually have one case study that's coming up in the slide deck, but we'll talk
Okay.
about that later. But I'll just talk about one quick one. We've got, let's say there's a recruitment firm. They do a lot of candidate screening as well as client intakes. And one of the things that, is not was a big pain point for them that when they didn't have AI tools was around the consistency of the messaging. You have like maybe let's say 20, 30, 50 recruiters, all of them are having different types of conversations. Not all of them are asking the right questions. And when you're running a company, you want to make sure that everyone's kind of capturing, the same thing across. It allows, it's a lot more structured, it's a lot easier. But then when you need to introduce these tools, and that's where I think we've got things like AI playbooks that kind of come in play here, that automatically scans and summarizes the call, the responses to questions that are asked, those kind of things as well. So again, really, it's just around those kind of having that really specific end goal, and just start with one, and then when you get that right, then you can move on to the next one, because don't try to boil the ocean all at once. Really, I think that's the main thing around that.
I think you always promote that message. Start small, be
Yeah.
safe,
Yeah.
make the
Yeah.
next decision. So yeah, I love that.
Yeah. I can't do more than one thing at once. Anyway.
But again,
All right.
it's about protecting brand and reputation, right?
That's
Not
right.
only helping your customers, it's all that other stuff that goes with it.
That's right. All right. So well, we've nailed the basics, right? Once we've nailed the basics here, if you have the right data, the right visibility, now this is where things start to get really exciting for you. But citing back to the state of contact center study, we saw about 62% of leaders say that AI is already helping their teams shift from doing more to doing better, right? We're not doing volume, we're doing
I
better.
like that.
So in other words, we're spending less time chasing tickets, more time adding real value. And then around, I think this is true fact here. So 41% said AI frees up agents to focus on higher value work. And I completely agree with that. And the second one as well, 37% said it helps them handle the complex and high-stakes customer issues that really matter. And that's where AI actually comes in play really, really well, because you're letting the humans come in and balance that portion of their issues, and making them feel that they can actually contribute a lot of value. That's the balance we want. We don't want to replace people. We want to give them enough breathing room to think, solve, and connect with others. And when you have that happening, your productivity is not the only thing that's rising, but the quality as well. Quick question for you, Fran. Like, I
Yeah.
know you speak with a lot of contact center leaders. Have you seen teams reframing like success from pure speed or volume into more impact-driven work?
Yeah, and they've had to. So I think early days we thought, well, we had organizations thinking, I've put this AI in, I'm going to be able to reduce big numbers and my AHT is going to stay where it was. What's actually happened is the easy stuff's gone. So the balancing factor and the skew of your AHT means actually what we saw was it blow out hugely. Because what was left was actually more complex. What they've now started to think about is actually what's the appropriate way to handle this interaction and how do we anticipate needs? So it's not just about the interaction in front of them, but actually what else do they need in this longer journey of, the customer relationship. And it'll be slightly different depending on industry. However, it is about saying, how do we look beyond the interaction in front of me to think what is the needs across the customer journey and how do we anticipate that more effectively?
Agreed.
Because again, what they actually need is a higher level of expertise, people that remain in their organization. You will definitely see some organizations actually generate some savings where they do free up resources, but most of what we're seeing is that be reinvested. Or a reduction in the utilization of, say, a non-ongoing workforce or a supplementary workforce. So it actually means that they've freed them up because most of those were doing some of those low-value tasks. And what's left is the expertise and allowing staff to be more involved in customer design. So what does the solution need to be? And how do we think differently about it? So I think organizations that are still focused on traditional metrics, once they've actually introduced new tools, are getting some pretty quick wake-up calls around actually we need to be more strategic and more outcome focused. Do I think it'll ever fully change? No. I think there'll always be, we all live in the land of the most over measured environment of any part of any organization, and because it's easy to measure, it's always highly visible and it's a really easy distraction for people to go, but what about that 15-minute increment over there? Do I think it'll ever change totally? No, I don't, sadly. But what we are seeing is organizations really think about what's the interactions that are left, how do I support my customer, and actually how do I free up and empower my people to do that the most effective way.
That's right. There's always more story to the figures that are displayed in the data there.
Definitely.
Yeah, agreed. All right. So invisible versus visible AI. This is the heart, of what we mean by invisible AI. But I want to start talking about the opposite first. What is visible AI? That's the kind of thing we all recognize. chatbots, maybe really long IVR trees, automated responses that maybe say, I didn't quite get that. Can you please repeat yourself? It's really the AI that often, I'm sure everyone has come across, you see it often, and unfortunately, you have to wrestle with them. And you're like, okay, I know it's an automated AI. I'm just going to have to try and bypass it somehow. Invisible AI, on the other hand, so look, this is the quiet kind, the quiet, smart one that sits in the back of the room, doesn't need to announce itself, it supports your agents while they're helping the customers. It also, will do things like summarize a phone call, it detects the sentiments of the call, maybe gives a nudge when something important happens. It never really gets in the way of the agent trying to, connect with the customer. And here's the thing. When AI is invisible, customers feel like, they really got good service. They don't know there was an algorithm involved. And frankly, you know what? They don't need to. And I think that's the version of AI we want to move towards. It amplifies people. We're trying to replace them, which is the big fear of a lot of people with AI. So, on to our second poll. Now, that's what invisible AI looks like when it's done right, quietly making humans better at what they do. Now, I want to get a quick sense, from the audience to see where you're all already using automation today. I want to do a quick pulse check. Just take a moment to answer this poll here. It's which area of your CX operation is the most automated right now? You've got 5 to choose from: self-service, QA, coaching, routing, or nothing at all. And while we're waiting for the polls, people to answer, here's a quick trivia for you, Fran. If you had to guess, now, which country do you think is the most polite to chatbots?
I would definitely say not Australia. Sadly, I think it's a terrible reflection.
Yeah.
I would say one of the so which country responds to them the most politely? I know is that what we're saying?
Yeah.
I would say somewhere in the Asian region.
It could be true. I don't have stats for that, but I have the opposite. It's actually, in fact, the UK. They did a survey. They did a survey of all the UK people and compared to a lot of the data around the world. 42% of Brits admit to being really rude to chatbots than to actual humans. I think Kiwis and Aussies might have a better score. No.
Do you think? Yeah. Look, I think and maybe it's that we hear the frustration that comes out, right? And I think that by the time we actually feel the frustration of a customer, they've had to do a lot already, right? So
that's right. Have you ever lost patience with a chatbot before?
I
Be
lose
honest.
patience all the time with a chatbot. In fact, I'm the person that I just say operator. Because they drive me
Guilty
crazy
as
now,
charged.
Johnny. They drive me crazy. And fun fact, I've said this many a time. When my kids were little, they used to say, "Can I stay up and watch Mum on the phone?" Because I'd be calling up to I had a terrible run with a telco, and I used to call them, and it would be after work. So the fact, and my husband used to say to me, "My God, you've got to curb this because the kids want to watch you on the telephone. That's a little frightening." But again, it's about the frustration our customers feel, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
if we re-engineer frustration and that, will play out whether it's with a bot and by the time they get to a person, they're just really irritated, unrationally so often.
Yes.
But think about what else have they had to do to interact with us as an organization that made them feel this way?
That's true. That's true. I think I'm almost very similar to you, Fran. I'm almost in autopilot mode, and I've kind of really desensitized myself to these chatbots nowadays because maybe it's a bit of a bias because when I go into interact with chatbots, I'm almost sure you're not going to be able to answer my questions. So let me just talk to someone first already.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And I
human.
think sometimes you've already tried everything. like the IVR that says, did you know you could go on our website? It's like, yeah, I tried that 5 times, but actually what I need is a person because I've already tried all those things. And I know that's not everybody,
Hmm.
but it does create that response, right?
That's right. That's right.
What are we
Uh,
seeing it in our poll here, Donny? Where interesting self-service, that's probably what I would have
oh,
expected.
yes. Yep. Yep.
No coaching. Interesting.
Wow. Okay. Well, maybe people just don't know how to use it yet, right? It's also about
Yeah.
education too. But routing comes second after that. So okay, that's to be expected.
Yep.
And interestingly, none yet as the third one. Hmm, very, very interesting. But QA, I think that one is a unexplored area where people don't realize how much AI can actually do better there, which
Yeah.
brings me very good segue into my next slide, which is a case study. So I mentioned this earlier. So we're going to try and bring this all into a real world example because, talking about theory is great, but nothing beats, seeing how it actually works in practice. So we have a customer, they're called Disrupt Digital, Australian-based company, fast-moving digital marketing agency. They've got about 60 staff or so, focused on managing a lot of Google ads, so lots of sales calls. They do a lot of outbound, especially campaign calls, client check-ins, and those kind of things. Before they were using Dialpad, they had a really big pain point. It's about the quality of the calls that their staff are making, and they didn't have a way to monitor that easily because their QA and coaching really covered a small fraction of calls. And I'm sure a lot of people here who are not using any kind of AI tool to automate this probably feel the same pain. You're probably measuring 1 or 2 calls per agent, maybe if you're lucky in a week, out of maybe 1,000 calls that happen over that span of time. So the return on investment of your time to give value is very, very small, and it's not the most best use of your time. So with Dialpad, what they did was they used things like AI Life Coach, AI scorecards, AI CSAT, and for that, really changed the game for them completely. They're reviewing now over a blazing 90%, right? 90% of agent activity. And every agent gets real-time support and post-call feedback. This is not a guessing game for them anymore, but what a good call looks like. All the agents get really clear, consistent guidance, and the managers get visibility without spending their nights and overtime listening to random call samples, hoping that they might strike gold. And what's the outcome here? Really, they're getting more confident agents, better quality conversations, and obviously, that translates to a stronger customer experience and a better business revenue. This is what we aim to model as what invisible AI, a good invisible AI, it looks like when it's done right. And it's really just about doing things quietly to make everything work better there. Okay, right. Before we approach to wrapping things up, I want to give you something simple that you can take back to your teams. It's a 4-step lens for balancing automation with some empathy in there. It's not a complex framework, it's very simple. Think of it as more like a filter of how you approach any of your AI decisions in the contact center there. The first one is, you got empathy. Start with the human need. What does your agent or customer actually need to feel supported or understood? You got efficiency. You then bring in the AI to make the experience smoother. Again, the goal isn't to replace the connection. It's actually to try and remove that friction there. You got oversight. No AI really should ever run on autopilot, okay? You always got to keep the humans in the loop, review the outcomes, and keep fine-tuning it as you go. Remember the little new employee example we talked about earlier? That's the same thing. And finally, the outcome, always check whether the experience has improved for both sides. It's not, one-sided, the agent and the customer. And this is how I think the technology is actually doing its job. So let me walk through a quick example here. So imagine, customers calling in, they say they've been double charged for the invoice, right? Firstly, the customer's trying to calm themselves. The tone is really calm, but maybe in the next 30 seconds, they just lose the plot, right? And the frustration is really clear. Now with Dialpad, we've got a real-time AI. We can pick this up quite instantly. Flag negative sentiment, and maybe surface a quick, for example, assist card to the agent. Just reminding the agents, hey, look, the customer's frustrated. Just acknowledge the emotion before you start explaining about policy and things like that, right? Now, if the agent decides to pause and use that information and process it, so okay, they can say, I can hear this has been really frustrating for you. Let's take a moment to sort it out together. And from there, the customer feels heard and they're starting to calm down, and you can hear the tone shift immediately. Behind the scenes, maybe the supervisor gets a gentle alert, say, hey, it's not a red siren alert of anything. Maybe just a cue to monitor in case the call keeps heading south. And after the call is finished, we'll have an AI scorecard, auto grade the interaction, and the coach reviews the short clip, maybe highlighting that turning point. They talk about with the agent what worked, what could be improved. The agent gets positive reinforcement and really, really fast feedback while the moment's still really fresh in their minds. Right? That's just a real simple example. It's not always going to work like that, but think about how all of these tools interact with each other to provide a really smooth experience for how the humans are involved in each step there.
Love that example, Donnie. And I think again, it comes back to what is the practice within an organization that actually allows staff to acknowledge those things. We see some organizations that say, well, we're not apologizing, we're not doing that real old school kind of approach to customer. But where we're seeing real success is where organizations really empower their frontline people to step in and own the problem and really support a customer through that, regardless of what's happened before. They're not admitting that it was anything to do with them. They're not doing any of those things. They're literally just empathizing, and the difference that makes to tone and as you say, just being heard definitely makes all the difference. Got a question here from Stacey. I'm just going to throw into you before you jump into this part. And it sort of touches on what we covered a little bit before around, this growing exec interest and excitement, I would call it, Stacey, in AI. Stacey's curious to know if, and tell us if what you're seeing, if businesses are creating dedicated roles within customer experience teams to manage that human oversight AI requires. We've seen some interesting Senate estimates over the last month where we've seen all about the lack of oversight or delayed responses to oversight. Or is the responsibility being shifted to IT teams and, potentially risking that loss of that customer-centric perspective and, the risk that goes with that. So in Stacey's organisation, there's growing interest and current responsibility sits between both teams. Maybe it's a growing case for that dedicated role within CX to manage it. What are you seeing organisations step into that space with?
Yeah, look, I think no one really knows the right answer to this. I mean, IT has their own roles, CX have their own roles, and then where's the gray zone that kind of both need to kind of manage this together? It comes down to, I think, when I speak to customers, the ones that do this well is that they have both teams really well invested into the outcome and achieving the same outcome together, right? It's not like IT's, I look after infrastructure, that's all I do, and your systems are up to date, that's all I do. It's not about that. It's about what are these two teams working together to deliver that final outcome that's a shared goal, right? And I think when you have that, people are starting to collaborate more. I think you can't probably, maybe people can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think you can have the sole responsibility on one person to manage everything, because one person, or at least a small group of people, won't know the whole answer. It's where you get the collaborative efforts from others that actually produce more, outcomes you never thought about. And produce a lot of more innovation out of it, because you don't just evolve just on your own. You get inputs and feedback from external sources, which actually produce better outcomes there. So, I mean, with Stacy, your question there, it's a challenge, and I think there needs to be a conversation, true conversations that what is our shared goal? Where do we need to go together, so that we can both achieve the outcomes? Because I don't think one person or one team can just do it on our own. I mean, some people might want to deflect the responsibility, but everyone needs to work together. It's not, one person sailing the ship that way and the other one goes that way. You're just not going to have the right outcome, I think.
Well, I think you're right. I think probably where we're seeing organisations go is think about the framework of governance that they actually want to introduce first, Stacey. So they're looking at what is an appropriate review period. They're doing a lot more collaboration in actually designing the process, so designing that journey and what it needs to look like, handing that over to then be designed by IT, then joint testing. So is it actually doing what we thought it was going to do? Are there unintended bits? Have we missed steps, et cetera, et cetera? But having very stringent review cycles in place, which includes reportable outcomes, and that's joint owned. So it then feeds up to an exec. So there's probably a couple of different ways to look at the model. But I would say the first step is, what are the different elements within it, and how do you collectively, if it is both areas that have such input, how do you collectively own responsibility for the assurance, and how can you structure that in a really coherent and regular way, which doesn't result in people putting off responsibility, but actually creates but we see it a lot, Donnie, but it creates a real sense of shared goals, shared outcomes.
Yep. Agreed. All right. I realize I don't have a lot of time left and still a few more slides to go. So I'm going to try and work through this without losing too much
I'll stop
momentum. That's okay. Love it so far. Anyway, love the questions. All right. So we've been talking a lot about what AI can do, but this part is only what humans can actually do. AI, here is really brilliant at spotting patterns, telling you which calls ran long, who interrupted, and all that stuff. But what it can't do is understand why those things actually happen and what that means, well, for someone's growth. So this is where, coaching actually comes in. Great coaches don't just review the numbers, they translate a lot of the data into development. They bring a lot of things that you can't teach AI, like context, judgment, empathy, all the things that make feedback, land in a way that really motivates people rather than deflating them. The last webinar we ran with Auscontact back in August, if you guys want to review, feel free to contact Fran and Jess. It's, we talked about this exact balance, how well blended coaching models work best when AI provides that clarity and also humans provide the meaning towards it. And this slide here is the continuation of that story. For you guys the audience, question for your team is that, are your supervisors and coaches really set up to interpret AI insights, or are they just reading them like a plain marketing brochure handout? That's the real difference between technology that tracks, the performance and technology that transforms it. And this is where, all the things come together with the human to AI spectrum. A lot of organizations we talk to, they aren't just, chasing the full automation here. What they really want is the right balance, enough automation to make things easier, but still keeping that human warmth and customers, really expect. Now, this is think of it as like a sliding scale. One end, you got really fully manual, human-led customer service. Lots of control, but very slow, hard to scale. On the other spectrum, you've got full autonomy and systems that run themselves, but can easily lose that personal touch, if you're not careful. And then in the middle, there's that sweet spot, maybe a bit of assistive, invisible AI, where the technology really supports the human instead of overshadowing them. So for the audience today, I'd encourage you to take a quick self-check, with 3 questions. Where are you now on the spectrum? Where do you want to be maybe next year? What steps are you taking to move towards that? For us at Dialpad, we work with customers. We often start with the same conversation, not about how do we add more AI to your stack. No, and because having AI is not really the goal. It's using in a way that accelerates your business and really improves the human experience. And that's the mind shift I hope you guys will take away today. Treat AI as an evolution, but not the destination there. So what does invisible AI look like here? It's not a dashboard. It's not a bot. It feels like when everything just flows. You got agents when you get the right prompts. You know exactly when you need it. Not 3 seconds ago. For the coaches, invisible AI means you don't have to hunt for those through those endless call recordings. So the system will surface the key moments that you need to jump on straight away. And for the customer, it's a really subtle. They're not feel like they're talking to someone that's reading a script, and they feel heard. And that's where the AI really disappears in the background, and that's the sweet spot that we want technology to support people. Right, a couple more slides, I promise. We'll kind of wrap things up. We everything we talked about today, from invisible AI to human AI spectrum, really only matters if it actually works in real life. In Dialpad, our platform's designed to make AI feel really natural, and we've got things like AI live coaching, AI scorecards, AI CSAT, AI recaps, and also AI assistants, to do a lot of these things. And we're not stopping there. Remember the first video I showed you guys? Dialpad's next evolution is what we call agentic AI. It's the new class of AI that just doesn't assist; it also acts for you. It just does a lot of things that supports decisions. Sorry, it's a moving from AI that supports decisions to AI that takes intelligent action on your behalf. And in Dialpad, we're trying to build that future for you right now, where every interaction is not just powered by AI but guided by intelligence. Last poll, do we have time for that?
Yeah, throw it in there.
Yeah. All right. Final last poll. We looked at what invisible AI looks like in practice, how Dialpad's achieving what make that happen today, from live coachings and scorecards. But something worth thinking about, if you had to make AI truly invisible in your own customer experience, where would you start? Would it be behind the scenes in your QA, self-service, training? Go ahead and choose the area where you think automation could quietly make the biggest impact in your operation.
Johnny, while that's happening, I'm going to throw
Yeah.
2 last questions at you.
Go on.
First one from Jan. We touched on empowering staff, heard lots of things there around simple tasks, etc., etc. What is your favorite AI capability within the CX space or even outside the CX space, and has it changed your life? What a great question, Jan.
That's a
I can't choose. I
great
don't know
question.
what my favorite one is.
Well,
What would you say, Johnny? Even if you think about what you guys are delivering, where are you seeing the most?
My honest feeling,
Yeah.
because I still am traumatized from my days working in a contact center back. So for me, I love our AI scorecards. Everything is just automated. When you have every single phone call that's automatically graded for you, I feel like this is a blessing from God. I cannot imagine why didn't we have this technology before?
Yeah.
Because I remember that all the days I dreaded so much is having, oh my God, I've got all these calls I need to review. I have so little time in my week,
Yep.
and I'm not really doing a service to my team. That is, for me, is being a big game changer. But look, that's my situation, in terms of like that particular pain point, that
Yeah.
lack of time, a lot of stress, and then very hard to find what's the right call to review. That
Yeah.
I know those are my KPIs. So
Yeah. I would say probably my current favorite, because I do change all the time, Jan. My current favorite is the impact that the coaching can have. I always say the best agents are confident agents, and anything that can help build confidence. If you can have, again, and if you have to wait 4 weeks before you have a coaching conversation about a call, you've lost that magic moment. So I love what I'm seeing with some of the coaching and training, and how it then connects to make training better for everyone else that's still to come. So I've got to say, I love that. And sorry, there's one more question here from Georgie about QA. In a business environment that's often driven by FTE reduction and immediate budget outcome, how would you suggest framing AI or automation projects that add value in less direct ways, like building better coaching insights or improving consistency and quality outcomes? Have you got any ideas around that? And we could always put some answers in what we send out, Donnie, if it's a deep, complex question, because there's a lot in that.
There's a lot I want to answer. I don't want to tie up too much people's time. Georgie, I promise you, I will give you a written answer for this. So trust me, we'll provide you
Because there's a
something
lot
for
in
that.
that.
But yeah,
Yeah.
I think it deserves a comprehensive answer rather
Yeah.
than a short one. Yeah.
Love that.
Anyway,
Look at that. Quality assurance.
yes,
Actually, they've all got good representation there, to be fair. Real-time customer interactions, love that too. Self-service design, coaching and training. Yeah, look,
amazing.
we
Quality
probably would
assurance
pick
winner.
them all. Yeah, for sure. Interesting. Love it. Donnie, thank you as always. We've been terrible at keeping time. We're only 5 minutes over, so that's not too bad. But I always walk away with so many insights sort of spinning around in my head after chatting to you. So it is such an exciting time in our industry, and we love that you guys continue to push the boundaries and, actually help us understand those opportunities better when you come talk to us. So can't wait for the next one. Everybody, hope you have a fantastic day, and we will see you at the next session. Thanks,
Thank you so
guys. Talk
much.
soon.
Thanks, everyone.
See
Cheers.
ya.